This is Sandy Ward. I'm a director in our cloud team here at SAP. Thank you for coming to you from snowy Denver, Colorado, while we all work virtually from home. Thank you very much for your time today and joining this webinar co-hosted by SAP and Mindset. We're going to be talking about an app that was developed by Mindset on the SAP Cloud Platform for transportation management. And you're going to be co-presented today from Andy Prier, who is a director of solutions at Mindset, as well as Cam Patters, who is a solution manager here at SAP. We highly encourage you to put in questions into the chat box. There will be time at the end of the session for live Q&A, which we'll be happy to host. And with that, I'll hand it over to Andy.
Hey, Sandy, this is Cam. I'll go ahead and I'll take that.
Okay.
Again, thanks everybody for taking the time to join this webinar. This is actually the second one we're doing. We felt that in this day and age of COVID and everyone sheltering in place, that this is actually very appropriate. And so we wanted just to share with you again how SAP views the digital supply chain and how partners such as Mindset are enabling and extending our solution capabilities by leveraging the SAP Cloud Platform. I first wanted to take a little moment and share with you what SAP calls the intelligent enterprise. For those of you who are not familiar with this term, it is not a solution that SAP offers, rather it's a concept. SAP, our bread and butter, has been working in the, what we'd say, core business processes for over 40 years, starting with the, what we'd say, order to cash or procure to pay processes. That's based on our SAP HANA platform, as well as it's the S/4HANA digital core. And when we think about intelligent enterprise, things that weren't possible 5, even 3 years ago are now possible with newer technologies like the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And even more so, we're able to take advantage of experiences, because today we're in the experience economy where customers are giving real-time insight and feedback to companies on how their products or services are behaving and acting. And this has a very real impact in terms of how companies respond. And given the fact that we're all sheltering in place, this is definitely becoming more and more evident. And so with the Intelligence Suite, leveraging all of these newer technologies gives us the ability to really truly call ourselves an intelligent enterprise. And so you'll see on the right-hand side, we augment our S/4HANA digital core with other capabilities, such as customer experience with Hybris, people and expense management using Concur, even doing remote workers, like leveraging our field glass networks. And so with the digital supply chain, I'd like to share with you how traditional companies operated. And so when you think about traditional supply chains, it was always about companies at the top wanting a connected supply chain, but in reality, we all are operating in these departmental silos. And the traditional logistics supply chain is all about plan, source, make, and deliver. And from an SAP point of view, we actually think of the supply chain a little bit more in terms of an extended supply chain. And again, companies typically operate in a linear fashion where they have an annual operational plan, really setting the tone for what they expect for that year in terms of revenue as well as production. And then it's a matter of adhering to that plan. It usually gets shoved in some file cabinet, and then the plan is looked at the end of the year where companies say, okay, how well did we do? Well, SAP says that is no longer good enough in today's day and age, especially in a digital economy. And so we're actually helping customers digitally transform. And so what we're actually doing is moving to a closed network. And I apologize, the slide looks a little bit off. Hopefully the next slide will show it better. But essentially, we're taking this linear approach of design, manufacturing, deliver, and operate, making it a closed loop type of process where planning is actually instrumental throughout all stages or those silos or departments that are functioning in a supply chain. And so combination with the network economy, we see that work in a digital world not only will be networked, fostering, even enforcing cooperation across these functional silos, and eventually elimination of these silos, leading to much greater decision making. So rather than talk about each of these areas from an SAP perspective, from a messaging standpoint, I'd rather take a look at what we're all experiencing this shelter in place with this COVID-19 and what companies are doing. So I'd like to give you some examples leveraging this idea of the ventilators. So it's no secret, right, that all countries, not just America, is experience a surge or a increase in demand for ventilators. So if we put ourselves in the mindset of a ventilator producer, such as Ventec, I can give you an example of how our design to operate for supply chain could be leveraged. Thinking in terms of the design phase, I've got a example of a ventilator showing literally all of the different components and parts that are required to make this. And assuming that we start with that planning, what we would see is that as a company that the demand for our product has suddenly spiked, and we all know why it has spiked. So the question becomes, how do we react to that surge in demand? Well, first off, we need to understand what components do we actually have in-house or in inventory, and then the components that perhaps we're short on, we're actually going to have to figure out and source from the appropriate vendors. Now, you can imagine the time and speed of getting these ventilators into the hospitals to be used is of the utmost importance. And so it's possible that the traditional source or materials for these suppliers, the lead times might be longer than what we are really able to deal with in today's response. And so it's something where we can now expose potentially a CAD drawing, and we can actually outsource now parts of this ventilator so that it could be constructed perhaps depending on the actual component or the piece that's required. It might be finally assembled right at the hospital just in time for to be used. That is a very aggressive and an extreme example, but just ways to illustrate that as you're able to plan, start to understand where your inventory is, as well as where your source of materials could be, can really start to give you different insights in terms of how do you most efficiently produce this. So with this design, we're seeing another example, companies like Medtronic, they're actually open sourcing their ventilator designs. We're seeing customers like, or companies like Dyson, who traditionally make vacuum cleaners, where they have basically retrofitted one of their motors to be a ventilator motor, and they did this within 10 days. So from the design process perspective, this is key in order to pass that over to the manufacturing to do the assembling. So moving from the design to the manufacturer, again, I gave you the example that depending on where the source of materials are, I may not be able to adequately produce all of my ventilators in time. So I might want to use 3D printing technology to create some of these components. And so again, having that open source, being able to have the network and communicate and collaborate with all the stakeholders, we can ensure that we're creating these ventilators And then more importantly, once we've manufactured them, it's about being able to get them into the hands of our customers. Other examples of where manufacturing is being upended. You may have heard examples. We're working with the auto manufacturers on how they can retool their assembly lines for traditionally manufacturing automobiles into manufacturing ventilators. We're seeing companies in the retail sector, for example, like Ralph Lauren, who makes clothes, where they're now retooling their sewing machines and processes to now make masks and other PPE such as gowns. Uh, so once the manufacturing has been assembled, it's all about being able to efficiently respond and deliver. It's no secret in the case of our own life experiences. I'm sure you've all have a story where you've gone to the grocery store and whatever those key staples are, the shelves are completely bare. So what we're actually seeing now from the likes of CPG type companies is not that they don't have the inventory or the capabilities to produce material. It's really that they don't have the capacity to ship all of the needed materials or supplies to restock those grocery stores. So again, if you can imagine, if you are a national or a global retailer, and if every single stocking point that you have is sold out of your product, you now have a massive complex distribution problem. And so because of those carriers that companies are normally contracting with are also experiencing demand from all of their customers, we're seeing new business models or new opportunities such as Uber Freight, where customers are actually going into the spot market and procuring their loads. So that's just another example of the supply chain of where Design to Operate we can support. And then lastly, it is all about that operations. And so it's knowing how are these ventilators being used, what type of feedback or information can we harness from this using Internet of Things and sensors. We're better able to have insights so that when we have the next iterative round of producing ventilators, we'll certainly capitalize on any deficiencies or improve upon the design of that. So that gives us hopefully a couple different examples of how customers in this unique challenge of COVID are responding with supply chain processes. I'd like to focus a little bit more on just the deliver side, and especially where our partners Mindset have helped to intersect or create the intersection between our transportation management and warehouse management solutions. So with that, logistics really covers both what we call transportation management and extended warehouse management. And the reason why we look at those as a combined or synergistic solutions is that anytime companies need to plan for their transportation, regardless of the mode that they're planning for, they need to ensure that the warehouse is executing or operating according to the transportation plan. So it's no good to spend all this time planning, trying to figure out the lowest cost options, multi-stop delivery capabilities, consolidation opportunities, if the warehouse isn't able to execute to that plan. And so what you'll see later on with Mindset is that they leveraged our SAP Cloud platform to bridge the gap between transportation management and warehouse management. So what we do in planning ultimately is interacted and executed upon by the warehouse. Further extending that, we take advantage of our logistics business network. And as I mentioned before in the Design to Operate closed loop picture that I shared in the earlier slide, these networks really will help break down and foster more collaboration across the enterprise. So let's take a look at how transportation can leverage that network. I mentioned that Mindset built out their application to be an extension to transportation planning. when we think about transportation planning, it really is about these 6 pillars where strategic freight management really encompasses and supports the contraction or contractual obligations, as well as the process between the shipper and their carriers. Order management is about managing the orders that are coming into the system so that you can take advantage of consolidation, whether it's inbound movements, outbound movements, or perhaps even a combination of both inbound and outbound. And so looking at planning, it's the really what we call the heart and soul of our transportation solution, and that we take all of these rules that companies traditionally have, whether it's paper-based Microsoft Excel spreadsheet type of planning system, or it's just institutional knowledge in terms of how products are being moved. So we try to take those rules out of the people's heads, and we put them into a system, as well as we add a lot more capabilities, so we can come up with a single solve or a single best option, whether it's price related or service related. Moving into the execution space, that's where we say it's about the visibility and the knowing where your shipment is and being able to respond to any disruptions in real time. Finally, we always say that customers won't be in business long if they don't pay their carriers. So a full-blown, comprehensive freight costing and settlement solution, including dispute resolution, is rolled into our offerings. And lastly, we think about the analytics and reporting. KPIs are always key, certainly is what drives future growth strategies as well as performance measures. And then I'll share with you a little bit about our logistics business network and then the strategy we're deploying there to enhance transportation management. And so the logistics business network is a cloud-based multi-tenant solution where it connects you as shippers with all of your stakeholders, whether they're your customers, whether they're your contracted carriers, whether they're freight forwarders, or even potentially other network providers, such as partnerships that we've announced with Uber Freight and InstaFreight, both spot capacity players in North America and Europe, respectively. We announced a partnership for visibility to help support our track and trace by announcing Project 44 and the strategic relationship. So regardless of what mode you're using, you can be confident that you're getting that real-time updates. If you are thinking in terms of more leading edge type of transportation concepts, we leverage the blockchain for material traceability and provenance, really ensuring the integrity of your product as it moves through the supply chain. And later on this year, we'll be offering a logistics control room, which will give you that analysis and analytical context to make better and more strategic decisions. All of this is a software that, as a service that SAP provides, so we take care of all the onboarding and the connecting, really allowing you all to manage your business. And so, with that said, I want to turn it over to Andy Prier and let him quickly introduce himself, as well as what Mindset is doing to help SAP's customers, as well as leveraging our newer capabilities and technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam, for that introduction there, and the presentation was wonderful. It's very useful information, especially for those of us working in the TM space. So my name is Andy Prier. I'm the Director of Solutions for the Western US and at Mindset. And we're a company that focuses a lot on what you might call like mode 2 types of delivery. So we work on innovation spaces, we work on mobility, some of those things that are a little bit outside of SAP, but integrating with it directly. And we're focused on UX and design. So about us is we are a technology partner of choice for a lot of global organizations. We're based out of Minneapolis. We're always, as I said, focused on exceptional user experience and trying to make the best user experience at work on the SAP platform. We focus primarily on the enterprise software suite, and we focus on bringing that commercial type of user experience that you would see within in spaces in mobile applications and things like that. So that kind of dovetails into what our mission is. We're committed to making the technology experience overall better at work for everyone. And so we focus particularly on staffing, anything having to do with SAP. We have a very broad network within the Minneapolis area and Colorado, but we do service all of North America. We focus particularly on candidates that have deep experience, who we personally have screened and believe that they're just rock star workers. We have solutions practices where we do custom development, implementations, SAP implementations, digital strategy, and then managed services. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the SAP TM driver application that we've done. Part of that has led to us being part of the SAP App House network. So we were the first SAP App House in Minneapolis, which is also the first in the US that is a partner, aside from SAP's App House. All right, enough about us. Let's talk about the driver's user experience and how we arrived at this solution. The story starts to begin with, we worked with a customer of ours, and they had some concerns about how the driver worked within their space and some of the challenges that they had there. And a lot of it we focused on making the clerk, making their job easier. So I think it's important to understand that story to see how we got to the point of making the driver's user experience better. So some of the things that we learned when we were doing this design thinking workshop is we heard a few of these quotes here that I think are pretty powerful. Drivers should stay in their truck for safety. That really resonates today with our shelter in place that we're dealing with now for COVID-19. Keeping our drivers on the road, keeping them safe where they don't get sick. This is a type of solution that would be really helpful for that. But in this scenario, the thought is that there's a lot of trucks moving back and forth, and then sometimes you have drivers that are getting out of their truck and they're walking across the lot, and they might get, they might get hit on their path to go meet with the clerk. So it was kind of a danger for them that we wanted to call out. Another thing that we saw was that the clerks were very busy. They were performing lots of different tasks, a lot of context switching. It seemed like a job that would be pretty easy to mess up, so we would be able to try to reduce the amount of context switching, and we wanted to focus on that. Another aspect of it was a lot of times they didn't have any sort of insight into when the trucks were coming into their lots. So it could be they had nothing all day, and then all of a sudden, there would be 30, 40 trucks that would show up all at the same time, and their dock is not able to handle that many at once, nor did they have the personnel to stage and load all of those different trucks. So some of the observations that we had here is that you can see here, we try to focus on empathy with our users and what their roles in everyday life is like. So we usually like to take pictures and say, this is what their workspace looks like. There's lots of job aids around. They have several screens up so that they can see all kinds of things going on. So much so that they need to have 2 monitors to be productive at their job. There may be 4 or 5 of these clerks at a time, and they're sharing this workspace. So it was easy for us to see what that empathy was. So basically, long story short, we're trying to get an inspiration of what we're trying to solve and who we're trying to solve that for. It helps keep focus on what the application is designed for, and how it should work for that user. So part of these, sometimes I like to do these cartoons and kind of doing an observation of what I saw, of what that clerk and driver's life is like. As you can see here, you know, the clerk and the driver are are very busy. The clerk has 4 or 5 drivers that are lined up. She has to create the delivery within SAP. Then she's got bill of lading paperwork. It's kind of a cluttered desk with lots of papers around. It was easy to put paper down and then get confused where it was at. Meanwhile, they have to get seals to put on the truck. Intermittently, there would be someone who would come and say, "Hey, we have a problem with a specific freight order." So the attention span of the clerk was kind of all over the place, and keeping their eyes down and busy and being productive and getting those drivers out fast was priority number one. But many times, you know, the other tasks that came in, especially like with the manager there, where there's a problem that needs to be solved right then and there because the truck can't leave until the issue is figured out. So it was there was a couple of ways of approaching it. One was just throw more people at it, which, you know, wasn't really an answer to solving the problem, and it wasn't something that could scale. So we had to think about what are some other ideas that we could apply to that to go forward. And so what we did during this time is we work with the customer to create some ideas. You know, what does this look like? What does the optimum goal look like? What does the optimum outcome look like? And so a lot of times we have our customers create these pictures and diagrams of how they see how the process works. And as you can see, you know, some of these ideas could be an application screen because they think that the application is going to be the thing that solves it. Another may be just a cartoon of just, you know, quickly showing how a driver would check in a certain way, and basically show what is the process flow. So this is all part of the ideation phase, where we start creating some high-level prototypes and then take away those good ideas to begin to formulate a high-resolution prototype, and then we can test that out. So our prototype, it came to be something like this. It was a solution to the intermediate step of fixing these things for the clerk, making their lives easier, and have everything all in one place. So what we ended up doing is we took relevant fields out of SAP that they were filling in. Perhaps they were on multiple screens, so we brought them into a singular screen. Used the SAP UI5 framework to create a Fiori application to really show, you know, what does this look like? We have a list of shipments that come in, where we're checking people in. We can get to the order information. We can get to the bill of lading or any sort of attachments that are there that if they aren't already printed out, they can reprint them. So it's not a kind of a hunt to find where all of those things are at. So it's all centralized in one place. So we test that out in a prototype, and then we work on, you know, what are the implementation details that we need to create a backlog to build a real application. So the story wasn't over. You know, we've implemented this for the clerk, and as you can see, we were able to shave off quite a bit of time there. So on the left, what we did is we measured how long it took under optimum circumstances to do something out of a solution in SAP. NWBC was the one that they had implemented, and we switched to a Fiori model, and we got it done really quickly, right? So SAP's technology really supported us there to do something innovative with the customer, where they were able to get it done very quickly and deploy it across their enterprise. So that focused a lot on the clerk and process improvement for the clerk. Switching over to what is the driver's experience, you know, and getting more to how can we solve their problems and how can we make their experience better. And mind you, not all of these are employees of the customer that we are solving this for, right? This is drivers could be part of their own fleet. It could be that they're using a third party to do that. It could be there's several vendors that are involved. So it's not something like you can have an application that you just give to your employees and you're ready to go. So what we found is we needed more of a vendor type of experience, right? Where we have the driver's experience improved. So the driver would get out of the truck, they would have to wait in line, they would have a chat with the shipping clerk and then wait for their paperwork. You know, the clerk would, again, as you saw, see dozens of screens that they had to go fill out and get everything filled out and ready to go for the driver. And then this was kind of a mode of working through everyone in the line. Once they answered the clerk's questions, they would, you know, get directions on which bay they needed to go to. They would have their seals that they would have to put on to secure their load. And then they would have to wait for that bay to open so that their cargo could be loaded or unloaded. And then they could finally move to their next stop, right? And so this could be anywhere from, you know, 5 or 10 minutes, or it could be a couple of hours that this happens. So what we're trying to do is basically flatten that curve to where the time is a lot less impactful for everyone involved. So the golden thread of what is our ideal experience, and this is a happy path on what will the driver experience whenever they come there. The driver will get a mobile notification that there is a load to pick up. In our scenario, we're picking up from Mindset. He opens the app to see what is the load, what is the requirements of his load, what kind of equipment does he need, how busy is the dock that he's going to, when is the best time to get there, and then when he gets on site, you know, he'll have directions on how to go where he needs to go. The driver will tap on a map link that will take them to his preferred mapping app that's on his device. You know, it could be Apple Maps, it could be Google Maps, could be, you know, another type of mapping software that he prefers. And then when he arrives on site, he's able to open up the app and his on-site time is updated. So then he uses the facility map that he's able to locate where the scales are, so he can weigh in with his empty vehicle and get a weight so that they don't overload him. And then he's able to check in. And next, after checking in, the routing information updates where the driver needs to go to a dock, and then he has a profile that has to do with his phone where he can put in his trailer number, his VIN that's on his tractor, and then also the TM order, or the freight order number, is what we key off in this app. So he'll have a freight order number that's communicated through the vendor, and he'll be able to give that information into the phone, and then it pulls up the relevant information. Once he's updated with where the dock that he needs to go to, where they'll either be staged or be able to load, they'll be able to back right in, and in an ideal world, it'll be staged and ready to load. Some customers, you know, that's not the scenario they have, but in this scenario, they didn't do staging. It was mostly hot loading. So then after that, the driver, while he's getting loaded, he might get another notification that says, here's another location with the same customer that's en route, that he's able to fill his trailer as requested by his dispatch. So what this value this drives is we have the ability to get as many full truckloads as possible. So it's money saving for the customer, and it's ideal for the vendor to have as many loads as possible. He's able to accept the pickup from the notification. and then he gets a notification once his loading is complete. After the loading is complete, he'll go back and take a picture of his seal so that the number is recorded into his phone, that he knows that that is the seal number. When the driver is ready to leave, then he'll have the time to go see when he needs to leave, or where he needs to go to leave, sorry. And then the app will detect when he has left the site. So this is geofencing. He knows that he's left the area, and the driver has left, and he's happy and he's saved time. So one of the ideal features about the geofencing on the application is we're able to tell how long they were actually on site. That's important because, you know, if there could be scenarios where drivers will come in, they'll check in, and then they might leave and come back later. And from the time they checked in, based off of current systems, it would show that the driver has been on the lot for, let's say, an hour or two. And now we're going to have to start paying fees because the driver was waiting for such a long time. It's part of our contract with that vendor. Okay, so now we look at what does the new design look like. And so this design was done in parallel with SAP. It was done in parallel with our customer, and then it was done in parallel with Apple. Okay, so this is what the initial design looks like. To kind of imagine, what would this driver experience look like? What if the driver was able to check in himself? What if we could make the experience where he didn't have to leave the truck at all? Right, so maybe he just drives onto a scale. That scale information goes back to the clerk. They know based off of the trailer number what the weight is. We're able to route him to the dock that he needs to go to. We know that it's ready, so he goes to dock number 5. He backs in. We know that he's loaded and he's ready to go. All of this is a part of this application. So then we move on to how might we put this together? What would this look like in actual Fiori user experience? We give them an app that puts them in control of the experience, and we're able to see what this might look like. And so this is all prototype that you see here. We're able to show that there's a profile that the driver puts in their information, a way for the driver to schedule something, a way for the driver to look up a freight order number, and see kind of the shipping instructions, contact information, what does the route look like, things like that. All part of the high resolution prototype. So now our check-in looks like this. We have an application that's on our mobile device, an iOS. We're able to, from the app, we're able to look up a freight order, view loads, everything can be started from here, or we're able to go in and just type in what is the freight order number and get to that. Here you can see a screen of this is where you're at. These are the places you need to stop. So you have routing information. You have what is the physical address of where you're going to. You have a chart here that shows what is the ETA for you arriving there, and when is the best time for you to actually come in. So if I see as the driver, I'm going to show up at 10, and the dock is really busy at that time based off of current scheduling, I should probably adjust my time to show up maybe around 2 or 3. So I don't really have to rush to get there. It'll be ready to go for me by the time that I get there. Drilling into the details about that, I'll be able to see what the information about the freight order is, and my pickup time, and when the ETA for me based off of my current location is to drop that off. I have contact information where I can call, text, email based off of the information that we have in our SAP systems. We'll be able to get in contact with those folks that are there. Also, product information could be available there. So what's useful about that is maybe it's a hazardous material, or it's a type of food that needs to be locked up and under seal so that it's not tampered with from the point that it's loaded to the point that it's received. So all of that information could be included here. It just depends on the scenario that is appropriate for your business, what you would see there. Okay, so we're going to do an application demo. We're going to run it on a video here, so bear with me. Okay, so we're the driver. We open up our application on our device. We're able to go in and add a load to our phone so that we can see what is the order that we've been just given by our dispatch. We look it up, get some information. We're able to see our trailer ID that we update, and then we have to update our tare weight. So we're likely in the same tractor all the time. It knows our tractor. VIN, that's part of the profile. We're able to check in and say we're going to be on our way. To process the check-in, it's going to dump us out to our map. It'll show us the routing information from our map and say that it's going to take 29 minutes to arrive. We hit go, and we're ready to go. So this is a bare bones real world scenario of how this could be useful. So based off of this, we were able to send the information. It's going to take us 29 minutes to get there. Maybe the ETA is late in the evening. So we're able to get some sort of scheduling out of that without particularly asking the driver, what time are you going to get here? We now have their GPS coordinates, and we're able to figure that out. Okay. All right, so moving to what's under the hood. This was built on the Apple iOS SDK, which is a partnership between Apple and SAP. It does implement the Fiori user experience in iOS. For this particular scenario, it was using SAP Cloud Platform and mobile services. It connected to a SAP backend, which was their TM system, and also some information from the ERP system. We utilize the geolocation for geofencing to see, where is the driver at, where is it a requirement for us to say you can't check in until you're like 2 miles away. Maybe you want to put that constraint there. You don't want them to check in when they're half an hour or an hour away. Maybe it's just a flexible amount of time. So you could put geolocation parameters on that. Similarly, you would be able to detect, it's like, hey, you've left the lot, so your check-in is canceled until you come back. So we're not accruing fees because you weren't really on the lot. It's really an issue in bigger lots. With transportation management, with the information that we were culling out of there, that was kind of the bare necessities to make this work was, what is the vehicle ID, equipment ID? We're modifying the tare weight of the equipment, what the driver's name was or driver information is. We trigger a pickup event in TM. We're doing delivery scheduling, bay scheduling, and then driver guidance based off of those features. What does it look like from the SAP Cloud Platform? So this is the pieces that we used within the SAP Cloud Platform. We were targeting an iOS application that would use mobile services on Cloud Platform, where we use connectivity back into your SAP S/4HANA system. In this scenario, we ended up using the third-party identity provider that SAP allows you to use on Cloud Platform, so that you're using an identity provider that you might not be the same as what you would use for your employees, right? It may be where you just use for an identity provider used for vendors, or an identity provider used for customers. that's what we did in this scenario so that we could manage the user base there. One of the other features I didn't talk about because it's not relevant to the application, but you are also able to, with your identity providers, to create a self-service, sign up screen. So that you get the application, you're able to sign up, and then it registers you with the identity provider. All right, future state. So right now it is only an iOS application. We're trying to move towards the Android SDK support using SAP's and Android's SDK there. Scheduling deliveries with customers. So that's another feature that we've had requested before, is the ability to say, okay, now I've picked up a load. Now I need to schedule a delivery with a customer so that we have a time horizon for when that customer is going to receive that product. Okay, there could be several ways to do that. If you're a company that uses EDI, that's one way you could do it. Another is emails. Can be pretty flexible around that. At this time, we did not do anything surrounding assigning bays to drivers. So this would be more of, it was a challenge for the customers we worked with to assign a bay quickly. So a lot of times it was just, still a person who would say, you need to go to this bay, because perhaps those pieces were not a part of a system. So the bay assignment isn't necessarily being done by the mobile app yet. And then with the maps, having not all facilities will have good maps or good directions to where they need to go. So it's usually incumbent upon the customer to provide those maps, and then we can incorporate it to the application to direct them to the current bay. But a lot of facilities, it's not so difficult to figure out where you need to go. There's signs that show you, so it may not be necessary. But there are larger facilities where you definitely need that routing. And then the last one there is to trigger a delivery or shipment creation by the driver. So a lot of times it's desirable to have that delivery or shipment created at the very last second so that changes can be made to it. And so then that way, when it's been dispatched to the driver, once they accept it, then we lock it for changes at that point. So that's still something that's in the future state. Okay, I've been talking quite a bit here. Maybe we take a few minutes for questions here.
Perfect. Yeah, we've actually had quite a few questions coming in, and I think these would be great to talk through. So with that said, the first one being, so can you explain a little bit about what happens if there's unwarranted delays during unloading or loading? Is there any capabilities to capture how long those delays are and send that back into the TM system?
Yeah, definitely. So we could base it off of event-driven triggers, right? So once we say, okay, you've been routed there, that status has been started. So we could create a status there to say, okay, we go load, and then take from that time from load to load complete. So those different events, we would be able to get that information out of there. And all of that could be triggered off of the device or TM. So one way I'm thinking of it is you could prompt the driver to say, are you being loaded? Or perhaps you have the robustness in your TM system to say it's being loaded. There are really flexible ways we can approach that.
And Andy, if I could add to that, once we capture those timestamps from your application, the SAP TM solution can certainly calculate charges based on time.
Right. Yep. Good addition, Cam.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer. We also have a question around if you can share some of the benefits for the rail industry around the TM implementation.
For the rail industry, I may have to transition that a little bit to Cam. I think that Ours was mostly truck facing. I can tell you that some of the things that we worked with that was in parallel to this was using like RFID tags and things like that to receive information as it comes in. But that's it's a different use case in this particular app. So Cam, maybe you have some insight on Rail with TM.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was Rajarshi. I apologize if I said that name or slandered it. So TM does certainly support the rail mode, not only here in North America, but also in Europe. We do have other rail customers. And in fact, we offer what we call a rail SAP user group. So I'd love to get you involved in that. I'll take your name and I'll send you some details on how you can join. But to answer your question, from a rail perspective, you could see, especially around intermodal, perhaps with trucks coming in, grabbing containers, you could certainly leverage Mindset's app in that case. Other ways that rail is being enhanced or used with TM is through that logistics business network, where we'll be able to provide that visibility. You all have the visibility with car location messages, so it might be more of a matter of how do we get those messages into the system to give you that real-time track and trace. And then lastly, from a rail perspective, when you think about charging for your services, certainly something you'd want to be able to capture, and having that in the system, not only can you report against it, but you can start to build those customers accordingly. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of how you can use rail.
Great, thank you, Cam. Also, there's a question around, is there a specific version of transportation management that is required?
That's a great question. No, there is no specific version. We try to tailor it for every customer. So that usually is a starting off point. I'm sorry, we have a starting off point, but for every customer, I know there's some differences between the versions of TM, but we're able to support all of them.
Great. And I know you mentioned this at the end of the presentation, Andy, but there's a question around, is there functionality going to be developed in the future around assigning bays to drivers?
Yes, that functionality is there for sure. A lot of times it just depends on the customer if they have that within their system and how they can trigger that. As we all know, SAP has thousands, millions of features that we can implement, but it's only as far as what you're prepared to take on. So that feature is definitely part of it, and we can use the application to do that. I might add that there's probably a use case there for enabling that with your plant floor workers who perhaps today they're using like scan guns or something like that, to have a tablet to where they can do a little bit more reporting or operational type of activities using a mobile application to do that. And so in that way, they would be more agile to assign bays to the driver, and then that would enable your bay assignment.
Perfect. And please keep the questions coming. We have a lot of great ones that are coming in right now. If you have any others, please just send them through the chat. We have another question around, does the app capture signatures on documents?
Yes, that is a good question. We've done that actually in the past, and there's a couple of ways to do that. Depending on legal requirements in your country, or if it varies by municipality or by state or anything like that. But we have done implementation before where you can sign with the driver can sign with their finger, and then it stores the signature along with the filled out paperwork. And then whenever you open the paperwork, then the signature is over the top of it in the signature box, basically. But that's the implementation we've done with it before.
Great. And how do you distribute the app to drivers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Another difficulty with distributing to drivers is, do you want to put it in the App Store? Do you want to have your own App Store that you push to your fleet? And then there's another way where you have a trusted enterprise certificate where you say, go to this URL, and then it is able to push the app to your phone. So there's many different ways to do it. Usually we suggest, it's probably worth getting it on the App Store so that you can push it to the largest audience possible. It just needs to be clear and branded that way.
Fantastic. And I think that kind of wraps up all the questions that we currently have in the chat. Again, if there's any other questions, please feel free to send them through right now. You can also, ask any questions to our speakers here today as well. But with that, Angie, I'll let you continue on and wrap up today's session.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate everyone attending today. Put the contact information for us up here on our thank you slides. So feel free to reach out to myself, Cam, or Sandy. I also have a spec sheet based off of this TM driver app. So there is a link that we have for that. And then lastly, we have a YouTube channel that we often put content on, such as this webinar, where you can go and check these things out later. So there's a link to that. Thank you for your time today, everyone.